I saw this video on Twitter, and I thought to myself, because I saw it was edited a little bit, there were some weird cuts, and so whenever I see a weird cut in a video, I'm like, all right, was the meaning of this distorted in some way? And then I realized, oh no, it's not, because Donnie Deutsch himself tweeted out this video. This wasn't somebody finding something horrible that Donnie Deutsch said and decided, all right, we're going to start some shit with Donnie Deutsch by clipping this and causing a pile-on. And as you can see, it did cause quite the pile-on, 929 likes to 2,000 replies. That is quite a ratio. But Donnie Deutsch put this out himself. Let's have an honest conversation about civilian casualties. Here he goes.
Start to really talk honestly about the definition of civilian casualties. 4 hostages rescued and 270 Palestinian civilians killed. We need to start to look at that word civilians. When the hostages were being held by a Palestinian journalist, a civilian, and a Palestinian doctor, a civilian, these are not civilians. These are Hamas ambassadors. And yes, there are innocent civilians, but I think back to also
innocent civilians, you mean like the children who are what, 40% of the dead? 2/3 are women and children. So it's a what? Let's say we assume it's equal numbers women and children, which is probably not the case because a household typically has one woman in it and a bunch of children in it, right? But you're talking about at least 37.5% according to the math here. Children. So they're not innocent civilians? Oh yeah, there are some. There are some.
And you can see that we talked about this the last show. You can tell when these people got orders because they all start saying the same thing at the same time. If you notice, this narrative started getting put out by commentators all at the same time. And then it gets repeated by all the crazy Zionists that you know. Well, because they know they have to do something about this narrative that civilians and this reality that these civilians are being mass slaughtered. So this is their attempt to spin it. Well, are they really civilians?
Right. And think of the absurdity of what he's saying here. Okay. Norman Finkelstein said when they accused UNRWA of having Hamas fighters working, he says, all that proves is that the Hamas fighters have day jobs. And that's really all this proves here, too. And look at the numbers. Even if what you're saying is true, which we'll take for granted that, yes, it is. Okay, sure, there was a doctor and a journalist who were holding a hostage. So let's say you designate those people as combatants, Hamas ambassadors, if you will. Combatants. Let's just put things very simply. Combatant versus non-combatant. How many combatants to a hostage? You rescued 4 hostages. Okay, so let's say each hostage was being held hostage by 10 combatants. That gets you to what, 40 combatants? How many people were killed in this rescue operation? 274? When a full hostage swap was on the table months ago, which would have killed no one? And you're going to come here and now try and litigate? Well, are the civilians really civilians? First of all, accepting your premise, the math does not work. You're still talking about a grotesque ratio of civilian to combatant in terms of death count for this most recent operation, which is, of course, what he's referencing because he's talking about who the hostages were and who they were being held hostage by, meaning specifically in the room with them. That's why he said a doctor and a journalist.
And you know what they're also not showing? A lot of what the hostages have to say about the way they were treated is off narrative.
Yes, there is a lot of that.
I'm not even going to get into it, but a lot of them are not saying what they would prefer them to say. I think what I can say here is you have some of them screaming at Netanyahu for his conduct of the war and for not doing more to release the hostages. And you're not even seeing that footage, which is much less controversial.
Those are big. There's a lot of footage there because those are massive protests in the streets. Those are not just a few people here and there protesting.
Yeah, no, these are people who were hostages. Right. Trying to confront Netanyahu, and you're not seeing any of that in the American press.
Exactly. We'll back this up a little bit.
These are not civilians. These are Hamas ambassadors. And yes, there are innocent civilians, but I think back to also the hundreds and thousands of rabid Gazans as they drag their corpse through Gaza, cheering, hysterical with glee and joy. And it's just, once again, the media coverage is, and these were 4 hostages.
Again, your math, hundreds of thousands? You saw hundreds of thousands of people? We all saw that footage. Did you see hundreds of thousands of people? I didn't. You know what hundreds of thousands of people look like? Hundreds of thousands of people look like what Russell was just saying. Protests in Israel demanding the hostages back. That's what huge crowds of people look like.
Yeah.
That were taken on a day that 1,200 Israelis were slaughtered, maimed, decapitated, killed in the most gruesome way. And I don't know if Americans had 4 hostages that were taken and we had a rescue mission. And yes, there were 270 casualties, and many of those Palestinian casualties are deep, deep, deep sympathizers of Hamas. Would the coverage be the same way? Would anybody be criticizing the rescue mission, or would it be truly one of heroism? But I do think we have to start to really talk honestly about the definition of civilian casualties.
You know, we did not, I made this point several months ago, we did not blow up the bin Laden compound. We landed helicopters stealthily outside and sent people in on the ground. And they didn't even have American hostages there. But we didn't want to simply blow up the building because there were human shields in there.
Well, to be fair, there were some very rare editions of Debbie Does Dallas and other Golden Age porn
yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
DVDs there.
Yes.
That we were ordered to retrieve.
A valuable stash. But that aside, this argument he's making, ironically, is an argument that terrorists make, that there are no innocent civilians.
Right.
This is the argument that Hamas, I'm
collective
sure, feels.
Guilt.
Yeah, exactly. There's collective guilt. Glenn Greenwald responds that people lose. Oh, he didn't respond specifically to this, but as Russell said, this argument is sort of the zeitgeist now. Are they innocent civilians for real? That people lose their status as innocent civilians if they support their government's violence and thus become legitimate targets was exactly the rationale used by Osama bin Laden. Yes, that's terrorist talk. Americans choose their leaders and support bombing our region, so they're not innocent. Yes, this is the rationale for terrorism. I find the views of the average Israeli, the great majority of Israelis, to be objectionable. I cannot justify violence against civilians because I'm not a terrorist. If you say there are no innocent civilians because innocent civilians have opinions and elect leaders that do great harm, well, then you are shattering the distinction between combatant and non-combatant. Whatever the views of a population, there are rules of war, which ironically, they're very keen to cite when brown people violate them. Right? But rules of war is that non-combatants are off limits. Non-combatants must be off limits in every war on both sides, because if you cannot declare non-combatants off limits, then you cannot enforce international law because you cannot prosecute war crimes if you're going to choose between worthy and unworthy victims. But of course, that's exactly what we do. And that's, of course, what Donnie Deutsch is doing. What Greenwald said is 100% right. 100% right. If you decide that a civilian population is responsible to the point where they should pay with their lives for the leaders they elect, that is the argument that an Osama bin Laden type would make. That's the argument that Hamas would make, ironically. So if you're going to reject it going one way, you, of course, have to reject it going the other way. But look, Donnie Deutsch gets a retweet from the state of Israel. The official silver check, not even blue check, silver checked Israel account. Donnie Deutsch is absolutely right. Reminder that a journalist and doctor held Israeli hostages captive in Gaza. And look at this. Prem Thacker tweets out, the government of Israel's official Twitter account is not just running with "there are no innocent civilians in Gaza." They are now boosting the tweet as an ad.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, that's Donnie Douche got his orders. Poor little rich kid that he is, like so many of these commentators are. No talent to speak of, simply inherited a business from his family, an advertising business. That's the only reason he's on TV. Not because he's qualified, not because he has anything interesting to say. He's rich and he has connections, so he's on TV spouting whatever AIPAC tells him to say.
Please clap.